The Two with Good Taste by Taterforlife. She heard it all the time. What is she doing with him? Celestia asked her to reform him, remember? I don't care. I wouldn't go near him with a 10-foot pole. She heard it when they went to town square. Miss Fluttershy, it's no wonder you spend so much time going through my carrots. I'd do anything to keep my eyes off him, too, if I were you. While they were on picnics. Ugh, let's go somewhere else, honey. Seeing him only spoils my appetite. When they visited Canterlot. Oh, great, he's here. And to think, I was hoping this town was improving. At the parties Pinky threw. He's like a game of pin the tail on the phoenix gone wrong. She even heard about it when he wasn't around. Holy haystacks! Did you see Garden Patch's newborn colt? I sure did. Poor Patch. Her foal's almost as ugly as Discord. Pfft, at least it's almost. It bothered her, to say the least. She had spent nights in her bed, trying to sleep, wondering about it. What was so wrong with the way he looked? Sure, he wasn't a pony, but the citizens of Equestria had always known that. They never had a problem with other sentient creatures like griffins or minotaurs, either. Griffins were a mix between eagles and lions. Minotaurs looked like a mix of bull and some other unknown thing with monkey-like arms. So what made Discord so different? As Fluttershy saw it, Discord was a mix of all sorts of animals, all very wonderful ones. He was fascinating to look at in her eyes. His eagle claw had talons as sharp and powerful as any eagle's or griffin's, with bumps on his fingers like the bird it resembled. His dragon tail was always in top condition, his scales always gleaming with health, not a speck of dirt or dust caught under any of them. His lion claw was always soft, his fur clean and shiny, with soft pads perfect for quiet steps. She had even seen him use Duclaw like a toothpick, just like a lion, and he almost always had them retracted, unless he was furious about something. His raptor-like foot was interesting too, with tiny scales just as clean and glamorous as his dragon tail, and she always found it admirable that he could manage to walk on two completely different feet. His hoof was always polished, and looked to be as tough and unworn as a young stallion's, though she suspected his were more like a goat's. His beard and eyebrows were as white and pure as snow, and amazingly soft and silky. She knew this because his beard often tickled her when he hugged her. She did understand, however, how his eyes could make a pony wary of him. His eyes were unique, and sometimes uniqueness was something that could startle a pony. She used to be terrified of them, and when she first met him, she had thought it was because of its unnatural color combination. But now that she was friends with him, she realized it hadn't been because of that. Now she didn't mind looking at them at all. They were full of warmth when she looked into them, making red and yellow a perfect combination for such a feeling. No, she had no trouble looking at him. She didn't find him ugly in the least. So, why did every pony else? Couldn't they see just how many brilliant, spectacular, beautiful animals made up his body? How they blended together to make a Draconequus? Couldn't they see past the yellow sclera and the red irises to see the warmth, behind them? And what about discord? That was even more perplexing to her. She heard every little harsh word about him that left a pony's mouth. Surely he could hear them too. He told her before that his hearing was incredibly sharp, another animal-like quality she found fascinating. Perhaps his hearing was like a bat's? He did have a bat wing after all. And yet, every time this happened, Discord had a smile, or, more often than not, a smirk, on his face. He walked with purpose and with pride, or floated about as if he were the cool cherry on top of a Shirley Temple. Fluttershy couldn't stand any sort of attention from others, especially the negative kind. There was a reason it took her years to finally sing on stage, in front of a giant audience that would heckle her at any time. So it was hard for her to understand how Discord could easily go through life without paying any sort of attention to the criticism he got. The worst part was that it was criticism for something he couldn't control. Fluttershy shook her head at that. Actually, he could control it, if he wanted to. But he could never change the fact that without magic, that was how he looked. He needed magic to change it. But he didn't. Not for any sort of reason, like that, at least. He was more often himself than not. If Fluttershy were him, she imagined that she would turn into a pony every day just to avoid the nasty looks and comments. But he never did. Why? Was his self-esteem really that high? Or was it an act? The mere idea of Discord wearing a happy mask to escape the hurt was enough to make her heart ache. The other thing that had been keeping her awake at night was all the pets still available for adoption at the Ponyville Pet Center. The last one had been quite a success, especially with the Ponytones to help bring in guests. Since spring had finally arrived, it was an excellent time to encourage ponies to adopt, so Fluttershy decided to have an adoption day for the pet center. She didn't have the Ponytones come this time. As popular as they were, Rarity had insisted that she do something else. You don't want to make an event the same thing each and every time, darling. Remember how ponies were starting to lose interest in the gala? You wouldn't want your poor, sweet animals to suffer from a lack of interest, would you? She had a point, but what could she do? She only knew the Ponytones because Rarity was her friend. She had a short professional relationship with Photo Finish, but she really wasn't comfortable with the idea that she could possibly be interested in her modeling again. She knew the princesses, but she didn't dare ask them to. Cadence and Shining Armor will come, Twilight had said a few days after Fluttershy had voiced her ideas. They're coming to visit me next week anyway. I'm sure they'll be happy to join in. And no doubt some crystal ponies will want to visit as well, if they let them know where they're going. Oh, well, I wouldn't want to trouble them, she said, blushing and letting her mane fall over her face. It might inconvenience them, and I don't want to have you ask for me. Fluttershy, you never trouble any pony, Twilight assured her, giving her a sweet smile. And besides, I already wrote and asked them. They're coming. A letter with Cadence's writing levitated out of her bag, with her agreeing that she'd be more than happy to help with the event. She said she would even ask ponies from the kingdom to come and look around and bring entertainment, including the famous fortune teller, Magic 8. She agreed to set up a booth and use her crystal ball to help customers know which pet would lead them to the happiest future. Fluttershy was ecstatic and gave Twilight the biggest hug she could muster. Discord hadn't been able to make it to the last event she held, but she was quick to write him a letter, putting it in a magic mailbox Discord had given her that would teleport it directly to him, no matter where he was. He had written back only a few minutes later, saying that it was about time he was able to attend something going on in Ponyville. Yes, everything was going to go splendidly. Or so she thought. Fluttershy! He opened his arms, making them as wide as his smile, and her heart skipped a beat in excitement as she flew into the hug. Discord, I'm so glad you could make it. As am I. I'm still disappointed that I missed the last one. Honestly, I'm hardly ever here when anything good happens. He put a paw and claw on his hips. For example, you singing like a stallion. Fluttershy blushed. Oh, well, that wasn't during the Pet Center fundraiser. That was afterward. Still, Discord frowned. I would have loved to see it. It sounds like pure gold. Looking down at her, his eyelashes suddenly grew long and curly, and he fluttered them at her. Are you sure you don't want to get Sakura's little potion and do a little singing for me? Her eyes grew wide and she squeaked. No, thank you. Pretty, please. With a banana on top. A banana bunch appeared on top of her head as he intensified his gaze on her. The stare only made her face heat up more and her heart race as she backed up. Discord, we need to get going. The event's going to start soon. Sighing, he snapped his fingers and his eyelashes returned to normal and the bananas disappeared. Oh, fine. Perhaps another time. She doubted that, but gave him a smile anyway. They set out on their way to the event. Discord spoke most of the time as they walked, though he tried to incorporate her in the discussions when he remembered to. He was getting better with the give and take of conversation, but still forgot to include her the more his mouth ran. Of course, Fluttershy didn't mind it at all. She liked the sound of his voice anyway. When they arrived, she was pleased to see that the event was ready to go, set up near the outside stage, as most outdoor events in Ponyville were. Her friends were already there, and the first two guests to arrive were the guests of honor. Cadence, shining armor. Oh, I'm so glad you can make it. Fluttershy greeted them, Discord naturally by her side. Thank you so much for coming. The animals really appreciate it, too. She nodded towards the dogs, cats, birds, rodents, and assorted other animals, including a few oddities here and there, available for adoption, and they all chittered and squeaked and sang their own thanks. Definitely. I think it's a fantastic event, Fluttershy, Cadence said. I hope you don't mind if I brought a few ewes for adoption. She gasped. You have some? Oh my, I... With an all-knowing smile, she pointed towards a small pen near the pet supply table. They're right over there. Thank you. She ran off to go see the ewes, not seeing Cadence walk up to Discord with a smile on her face, while Shining chatted with his sister. So, Cadence began, raising a lovely curled brow at him. Did you remember our talk? Whoa, Cadence, you think I'd forget so soon? He said, crossing his arms and raising his own eyebrow at her. It was only a week ago that I came, and it wasn't exactly easy talking to you about things. She snorted. Come on, Discord. I knew what you wanted to say the moment you walked in. Yes, 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 and a whoop-de-doo-dah for you, he replied, drawing a circle in the air with a pointer talon. She merely rolled her eyes with a smile, only to smirk even more as he leaned in towards her ear. So, he whispered, do you think she realizes it yet? Cadence shook her head. No, she definitely feels something, but she's not close enough. Not yet. He pouted. Oh, darn. I wish she'd hurry up already. Discord, she said in a reprimanding tone. You know these things take time. Well, I figured it out already. But you want her to figure it out for herself, don't you? Oh, yes, definitely, he said with a grin. I want to see her face the moment she realizes it. Well, Cadence shrugged at him, you'll just have to be patient. After all. She looked over to the yellow Pegasus, who was happily petting a sparkly purple ewe, a smile of contentment on her face. Isn't she worth it? He grinned at her. My dear mia mora cadenza, he said, jumping up and floating backwards as he started going back to his best friend. You already know the answer to that. It started as soon as more ponies arrived. It was the Crystal Pony Travelers that brought the topic up first. Usually it was tourists that inspired such talk. Local ponies had gotten used to seeing Discord often, but once the tourists started chatting, then even locals would contribute to the gossip. Fluttershy had just convinced a young family to adopt a crocodile when she caught the words. They were a group of crystal ponies, of course, easily seen by their glittery appearances. This event is for pets, right? Not just beasts in general? A lime green crystal pony asked. Yes, I think so, said an ice blue stallion. Then why is that ugly thing here? Fluttershy, trying not to seem too obvious, looked to where her hoof pointed, only to see Discord juggling 3 frogs up for adoption. He looked to be having fun, with the frogs more than willing to participate, and the foals and fillies approaching applauded him as he added more and more amphibians to his act. She would have smiled at his display, had she not known where the conversation behind her was going. He's appalling, one said. That crocodile is more appealing than him, said another. Did you see that horrendous mixed bag of a creature? Isn't he the Lord of Chaos and Disharmony? Ha! More like the Lord of Ugly. The group had erupted into laughter when Fluttershy shrieked at the voice behind her. Hey, Flutterbuddy, Discord said, snickering at Fluttershy's surprised jump as she whipped around to see who it was. Surprised to see me? Discord. Her eyes glanced over at the group, who weren't trying very hard to hide their stares, looking disgusted as their gazes bore into Discord. Is that mare really his friend? One asked. She's the element of kindness, Fluttershy, is she not? I think she reformed him, another answered. A Ponyville citizen then joined in on the conversation. A yellow earth pony with orange hair and 3 carrots for her cutie mark. Oh yeah, she did, she told them. They're pretty good friends. I don't know them very well, but whenever Discord comes to visit, he's almost always with her. Really? A pretty thing like her? Yeah. Well, let's hope that thing knows a mare can only be friends with something as beastly and hideous as him. Pfft, even if he didn't, There's no way she'd ever... Fluttershy! Huh? Fluttershy said, turning back to his attention. Discord huffed. What are you listening to those boring gossipy ponies for? Certainly I'm more interesting than them. Oh, I wasn't... She lowered her ears and eyes in shame, hoping no one else had heard him. You were too. And there's no need. Besides, I want to go see that fortune-teller pony over there. What's her name? Magic Math? Fluttershy's ears twitched to his words. There's no need. Had he been listening to them too? Was this his way of avoiding what was going on? And he didn't want her worrying about it? Fluttershy! She stopped her thoughts again, jumping for a moment. Oh, I'm sorry, Discord. I'm just thinking about the animals is all. But, what do you want to see Magic 8 for? Magic 8, that's her name. I knew it was Magic something. He mused for a moment. Anywho, why do you think I want to see her? She's got a booth all set up and everything. He glanced over to the booth, which was actually more of a purple, star-studded, glitzy tent with a table inside. Magic 8 sitting there in a gold turban, her crystal ball in front of her. She was a black unicorn pony, her cutie mark a white circle with an 8 on top, her mane and tail also black, with white eyeshadow and golden shoes on her hooves. So, Fluttershy's eyes widened slightly. You want to see what kind of pet you'd like? That, and I want to see if she's a fraud. Discord! He shrugged. What? Unicorns do it all the time. And if she's a fraud, then she's robbing all these good, paying customers of their money and time. And isn't that the wrong thing to do, Fluttershy? He said, putting his hands together and making his irises big and shiny. Don't these ponies deserve the truth? Discord. Their discussion was attracting attention. Fluttershy could tell, just by the way ponies were flicking their ears towards them and giving them glances before leaning over to others. She could hear their whispers, and if she could hear them, then there's no doubt Discord can hear them too. Am I wrong then, my dear? Discord asked. He took a step forward, shortening the distance between them, and lowered his neck to look more closely at her. The sudden close proximity made her blush. His gaze suddenly seemed intense, and she didn't understand why his closeness suddenly made her feel so nervous. He was always neglectful of others' personal space, but she had grown used to it. But with all the eyes and ears on them, and with him so close. Did you hear that? A nearby Pegasus said. He called her my dear. Oh, he says that a lot. The Ponyville resident with the carrot cutie mark said. He says it the most to her, though. Do you think they're a thing? A pony in a big group asked. No. No way. They can't be. She's got to have better taste than him. He looks like a rag doll chewed by dogs. He's hideous. Disgusting. It's one thing to be a former threat to Equestria, but his looks are the real deal-breaker. He's just an ugly old stallion. I mean, Draco... Drago... Oh, he's an ugly old creature, that's what he is. He's probably... She would never return. I hate his... So gross. Every word that entered Fluttershy's ears seemed to tear at her heart, and the insults weren't even for her. They were for her friend, who continued to stare right at her. And he had noticed that something was wrong. Something had been wrong during his entire conversation with her. Fluttershy, what's going on? She looked at him, squeaking. She couldn't tell him that she was worried about what they were saying. In her mind, she thought he was probably upset enough already. But the voices in the background continued to talk about Discord, about how ugly they thought he was, how unattractive, how unappealing, how silly he looked. It didn't stop. Would it ever stop? They're supposed to be talking about animals, pets, adoption, she thought in her mind. Stop talking about him. Can't they see he's right here, easily able to hear you? Stop. The voices kept taunting her, grabbing for her attention. She couldn't pay attention as Discord continued to question her, his face showing extreme concern. Ugly, stupid, beastly, gross, horrible, horrendous, hideous, horrid, foul, unattractive, unappealing, unbearable, unlikable, unlovable, unlovable, unlovable. All these words, all these insults, all of them being said right in front of him. It broke her heart. It made her jaw set. It made her brows furrow and her throat hurt and her wings flutter, and Discord had no idea what was going on. One moment she had looked horribly nervous, and now she looked nearly like a raging bull. He reached his paw towards her, about to lay a comforting touch on her shoulder. Fluttershy, are you? Before he could finish, she flew up and out of reach. He gasped at the sudden movement, the Pegasus blurry, as she swooped up and stopped just a few feet above his full height. What happened next not only startled him, but every pony. Stop it! She screamed, her eyes shut so tightly that it hurt, grimacing as if her entire body was in physical pain. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Discord gaped at her. He had no idea she could be so loud. Her voice echoed as she screamed, and the whole event froze. All the ponies turning to gaze at her in alarm. Even the animals shut their mouths and paid attention. Fluttershy, what's going on? Are you okay? Rainbow Dash asked, flying over to her in concern. Tank flew at her side, and the rest of their friends trotted under her, Cadence in shining armor included. No, I'm not okay, she yelled, blushing at her own volume, but angry enough to keep going. She turned and looked at the ponies around her, all of those who had insulted her friend. How dare you! She scolded them, her eyes glittering and glistening with not yet shed tears. How dare you! You don't even know him! You've probably never even talked to him! Fluttershy, whatever is the matter? Rarity asked. Come down, darling, and we'll... No! She shook her head. And I won't come down, not until these ponies apologize for insulting him. Pinky gasped. Are these meanies saying bad things about a cute little animal? No, they're being rude and disrespectful to... Fluttershy stopped. I can't say it. What if it embarrasses him? Unfortunately, her eyes said it all for her, looking at him as she desperately tried thinking of what to say. He looked back at her curiously. Wait a second. The green crystal pony from earlier, Lime Sorbet, spoke up. Are you talking about what we've been saying about him? She pointed at Discord. Ponies all around gasped, and whispers recommenced as Fluttershy panicked. Oh, were you ponies talking about little old me? Discord asked with a toothy grin. Why didn't you tell me? That's my favorite subject. Lime cackled. Is it? You're interested in dirty old rags like yourself? You look like something that came out of a garbage can. Then you must have some spectacular trash bins in the Crystal Empire. Ooh, tell me, Discord cooed, wiggling his fingers at her. Are they sparkly and glittery as you are? I've been looking for new accessories for my wardrobe, and I was thinking a trash lid would make a spiffy hat for me. Oh, trust me, Draconequus, she said, somehow able to pronounce it right. No wardrobe could help you. Wouldn't you say so, element of generosity? She leaned over and threw a glance at the posh pony, who gasped. But before she could speak, Fluttershy's emotions took over her self-control. Stop it! Haven't you been listening to me? Stop making fun of him, please. Why? Lime shot back, now glaring at Fluttershy. Why should we? He's done far worse things than we could have, and you can't ignore the fact that this creature is hideous. Why, I'd say that was the reason he went crazy in the first place, because he couldn't stand the look of himself. That doesn't even make sense, Fluttershy said. Discord smiled wider. Now, I think that maybe we could all just calm down, Applejack said, now stepping more into the crowd. There's no reason for the yelling and screaming. Who? Lime's ice blue stallion friend, Raspberry Ice, jabbed a hoof at Applejack. You're the element of honesty, right? Why don't you tell your little friend here? He pointed at Fluttershy this time. The truth, that her reformed villain is ugly. She doesn't have to lie just to make him feel better. Discord huffed at that. As if I need that. Nobody seemed to hear him. Applejack glared at him. You calling one of my friends a liar? I'm not calling her a truther, he shot back. Why, I oughta... I'm not lying, Fluttershy said, putting herself in front of Applejack and looking at the stallion. I don't think he's ugly. I really don't. I don't see why all of you do either, she cried, doing her best not to cry for her poor friend. She thought it was obvious that Discord was putting on a brave face for the others, but surely their gossip was actually killing him on the inside. You think he's ugly just because he's not a pony? But look at him, Fluttershy said, looking back at him. He's all sorts of different things. Wonderful, incredible things. Things we see in other animals like... She glanced at the birds, all in their separate cages, and held out a foreleg. Like Majesty, the golden eagle. Hearing his name, the bird happily recognized his favorite pony and took off, landing on her foreleg with a screechy greeting and rubbing his beak against her cheek. She smiled. Some of the ponies around oohed and awed at the display. And he has lovely scales, like our good friend and Twilight's #1 assistant, Spike. Woo! Spike called, pumping a fist and jumping on Twilight's back. You got that right! He made a show of it and flexed his arms, glancing hopefully at Rarity. And he's got a beautiful blue Pegasus wing, like Rainbow Dash does. Like I do. Like every Pegasus does, Fluttershy said. But he's not any of those things. He's not an eagle, or dragon, or Pegasus. He's a Draconequus, and... Discord's eyes widened. He glanced at Cadence, who, oddly enough, had not done anything to stop what was going on. She grinned at his hopeful look. Is she finally going to... he thought. Did you just compare your gross friend to us? A Pegasus mare, flying with a few other Pegasi, said, looking horrified. You think that just because he has a few feathers, that we shouldn't have our own opinion? That's wrong to find him unattractive. Discord groaned and slapped a paw onto his face. This was just getting annoying now, especially when he wanted to hear what Fluttershy was about to say. Cadence frowned and made sure to keep Shining Armor and Twilight from interfering. They tried protesting against her, but Cadence merely shook her head and whispered to them, "She needs to do this." I, Fluttershy responded, blushing and sweating at the forehead. You can have your opinion, but... But she's got her opinion too, Applejack said, still glaring at the blue stallion that dared to call Fluttershy a liar. Y'all are doing the same thing. But there's no way she could possibly think he's good-looking. And one little Pegasus wing isn't going to change that, Raspberry shouted back. How do you know what she thinks? Rainbow shouted from above, lowering down to join Applejack. You a mind reader now, pal? Well, does she? Raspberry asked. He whipped his head over to Fluttershy. Do you? You think Discord's handsome? The spirit of chaos? Fluttershy's heart stopped as all eyes eagerly looked towards her, and her entire face felt like it was burning. All these strange ponies, who were trying to force her into saying something so embarrassing in front of every pony. Her best friends, trying to defend her, but obviously curious as to what her answer could be. And Discord himself, whose stare made her the most nervous of all. She could practically feel his gaze from the back of her head, and yet she had no idea what expression his face made, or how he would react. Her throat constricted, and she felt like she couldn't speak. She croaked. Come on, a random pony in the crowd called. Say something. We're waiting. Fluttershy's vision blurred. Why had it come to this? I think... Fluttershy, a voice said from behind. It was Discord's voice, obviously concerned. Was he afraid of her answer? Was he afraid she thought he was ugly too? No, he can't think that. It's not true. We're not getting any younger here, another from the crowd called. But I can't say it. Come on already. I'll be so embarrassed. Hurry up. But I can't hurt him. Just say it. She trembled at the yells, the calls for her to talk. It was too much, a reminder of way back when, back at flight camp, with all those around her, glaring and taunting her. Her heart raced, her mind was scrambled, her breathing was hard. My, they really can't shut up, can they? A paw rested on her shoulder. She gasped and looked at Discord, who was stroking his beard in thought. How mad would you be if I put a zipper to their lips? Discord asked. Then he gasped as inspiration struck. No, wait, even better. I can turn their mouths to wax lips, and they'd still be able to breathe with their noses. Now that would be hilarious. Discord, Fluttershy murmured. What are you? A lion finger covered her lips. You don't have to say anything these nasty little ponies tell you to, Discord said. And to be honest, are you sure that you want them taking away your little furballs anyway? They obviously have horrible, boring personalities. Why subject your animal friends to that? Some tears fell as she gazed up at him, sniffling. His eyes were so warm. If she was going to say this, she couldn't do it while looking at him. She screwed her eyes tightly shut again. I think you're handsome, Discord. Another collective gasp, including her friends, minus the Princess of Love, who smiled. I think you're so very handsome, and I don't understand why every pony thinks you're not, and I'm so... She hesitantly opened her eyes again, her face streaked with tears. I'm so sorry. The attention had been too much now, and her face looked and felt like it was on fire. With Majesty taking off back into his cage, Fluttershy was quick to rush away, wanting to be somewhere, anywhere but here. She flew and flew and flew. Why did I say that? Why am I flying away? I'm only making it worse. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. What must he think of me? She made her way towards home. The crowd was quiet. Not even Fluttershy's friends called after her, too shocked by the rapid turn of events of the evening. Discord, however, was more than delighted. Sure, he hated to see Fluttershy cry, but he could fix it, so he wasn't worried. Instead, he began to strut, pushing ponies away and cutting through the crowd, giving Lime an extra hard shove as she was pushed against Raspberry Ice. He walked with his shoulders back and straight, his chin up in the air with the most arrogant look he could muster on his face. Some grumbled at him, even yelled. They seemed to forget that they had insulted the spirit of chaos, who could easily hurt them with a mere snap of his fingers, who had once made a hostile takeover of Equestria, with all its little ponies serving him as his playthings. The thought made him laugh. Ah, such stupid little ponies. They're lucky I'm so merciful now. They're not even worth my precious time. But he knew they stared and glared at him, so when he finally got out of the crowd, with all those nasty quadrupeds and his dear friends behind him, he turned his neck and gave them a wide smile, his fangs so white that they seemed to sparkle. Oh, she is so into me. Angel Bunny brushed her mane as she cried. Oh, I'm so confused. Fluttershy moaned, grass on her face from all her sticky, drying tears. And I'm such a coward. Angel patted her head in support, before continuing to brush her pink locks, hoping it would help her calm down. But I just don't understand. Why would they just insist that he's ugly? Why would Discord want to comfort me when he's the one hurting? Why? Why? The rabbit shook his head. He knew better than Fluttershy did. It was obvious to him that Discord's ego was just fine, but he thought it would be better to let her figure it out for herself. I think you're worrying too much again, he said in his squeaky, chittering voice. Well, well, well. What do you know? I actually agree with your little Angel Bunny, for once. Fluttershy gasped as she looked up at the tree she had taken residence under, while Angel Bunny glared at his least favorite of his pony's friends and hopped away. Discord had suddenly appeared there, lying on his back along the branch, with a fist propping his head up as he smirked at her. And if it isn't my little knight in shining armor. Despite her shock, she tilted her head in confusion. Huh? You, Fluttershy! Discord exclaimed, jumping down from his branch and landing in front of her. You're obviously my dashing knight, defending my honor for all to see. And let me tell you something, he said, leaning over and poking her muzzle with a talon. If you keep this up, I just may grace you with my handkerchief for you to tie around your foreleg. Then all the other knights will know that I favor you as my champion, and you'll always have to come back to me from war to return it. He snapped his fingers, and a pink Princess Hennin appeared on his head, between his horns. He fluttered his eyelashes at her again. What? Discord? She sat up suddenly, and he chuckled at the grass on her face. Perhaps my hanky should be used on your face first, before I give you my favor. he said, and a hot pink handkerchief with a cursive capital D embroidered onto it suddenly appeared in his hand. He began to wipe her face off. She sighed at the gesture and let him do it, though her blush grew worse. This only made Discord's smile wider. When he finished, he took her foreleg and tied the handkerchief around it. "Wait," Fluttershy said. You're really giving this to me?"
"My dear Fluttershy," Discord gasped. "I'm a pretty princess, and I would never lie to my knight about such things," he said, tightening the knot on the fabric to make it secure around her. "Besides, you look nice in hot pink."
"Discord."
"You know, you've been saying my name a lot lately, without saying much else afterward. Why don't we mix things up a notch and have you actually tell me what's on your mind?" he said, "just for the fun of it."
She gulped loudly.
I just... You were worried about me because of what those ponies were saying, right?
Wait, you knew?"
"Well, I have to admit, seeing you scream at other ponies was a surprise even for me," Discord said. "I even managed to get a few pictures out of it."
A camera appeared around his neck, and a photo popped out of it.
"See?"
He managed to get a good shot of Fluttershy shouting, her eyes shut tightly, and her wings flared out. It wasn't really her best look, and she was pretty sure she saw a small speck of spit in the picture flying out of her mouth.
"Glorious, isn't it? You were actually angry," he said excitedly. "And it wasn't anger at me. You'll have to help me pick out a frame for this. I'll put it right next to our selfie together."
"Discord."
"Of course, I have other shots of you too, but I like this one best," he said, looking at the picture again. "The light really shows off how tense your jaw is. It's really rather attractive."
"Discord!"
He turned to her. "What?"
"Discord, aren't you—"
She swallowed again and got back up from the ground.
"Aren't you upset?"
"Upset?" This time, he was the one to cock his head to the side in confusion. "You're the one who had grass stuck to your face, Fluttershy. Why are you worried that I'm upset?"
Why do you think I tried stopping those ponies from saying those awful things about you?" Fluttershy asked him, desperately trying to get him to understand. "I was worried. Don't you—" Her ears lowered as she remembered all the horrible comments that were spoken about his appearance. "Didn't you hear what they were saying about you?"
"Oh, right, yes. Well, of course I did," Discord answered. "I hear it all the time, and I'm guessing you do too by the way you were yelling at them back there. Fluttershy, you do know that those kinds of comments about me aren't anything new, don't you? I've heard those kinds of things my entire life. Even as a statue I heard it."
Her heart plummeted at his words. "Really?" Her eyes filled with tears again.
Discord groaned. "Oh, Fluttershy, please don't cry again. It really isn't a happy sight for me. It makes me oh so unhappy."
He then frowned, and his entire face seemed to drag down with it until he resembled a hound dog, jewels and all.
"Like this."
The sight was so ridiculous and over-exaggerated that even Fluttershy couldn't help but give a small giggle.
"Ah, there's the smile I was looking for,"
Discord said, the look going away as he brightened.
"Much better."
Her blush returned as she smiled more for him, but it only lasted a moment before she rubbed her withers with a hoof and looked away. "But doesn't it hurt your feelings?" Discord threw his head back and laughed.
"Ha! Oh, I'm sure they wish it did. They'd do anything to help them feel superior over me, which is impossible. Oh, Fluttershy, you're so hilarious. You worry far too much, and you'd think, with all the time we spend together, that I would actually care about what others thought of me. Come now, dear, he said, crossing his arms and bending his neck at a perfect 90-degree angle to stare her down. You give me too little credit. I couldn't care less about what those haughty little buggers think of me, especially when they have such horrible tastes and good looks.
Wait, so it really doesn't bother you? Fluttershy asked, her wings out in mild surprise. Besides, I know you never seem upset by it, and I know you hear what ponies say about you, but I was still afraid that maybe you were just putting up a brave front. She flew up to the height of his chest, Discord straightening his neck quickly before she could fly into his jaw. I was scared that their talk about you was hurting you. She put a hoof on his heart, right here. She didn't move her hoof. When I was young, ponies always hurt my feelings and said mean, awful things to me, and I would believe what they said, and it always broke my heart. So I was afraid that maybe the same thing was happening to you. Discord lowered his eyes, and he put his paw over her hoof on his chest. It used to hurt, yes, he said. A long, long, long time ago. As in years and years and years before I was even turned to stone. As in when I was just a kid. Ponies didn't find me to be as cute as the fools were. My childhood wasn't exactly a happy time. That really did make her cry again, softly and slowly. Discord, she whispered. But that was then and this is now. He then picked her hoof up and away from his chest, and instead held it in his paw while patting the top of it with a claw. I'm not naive like I used to be. I've long since realized that I am one gorgeous stud muffin. It's just as you said. Look at me. He let go of her hoof and pointed at himself. I'm so interesting. I've got a claw and a paw with fingers that ponies can only ever dream of having. I've got this tail, which I can use as a third arm if I wish, or... He tucked his tail between his legs underneath himself and springed up in the air like a coiled wire. I can even use it like a pogo stick. Fluttershy laughed out loud at that. I've never seen you do that before. That's because I nearly forgot I could do this, Discord said, looking down at his tail as he bounced on it. And you ponies can't do this? And my scales are shiny. You're right about that. Why, I'd say that they're even better than the biggest of gems in Rarity's collection, he said, admiring how the red scales glittered in the sunlight. Fluttershy nodded. Oh, of course. They're beautiful. You're beautiful. He immediately stopped bouncing, landing on his 2 feet. Oh, trust me, Fluttershy. I know. He whipped out a mirror from his back and looked at it. He winked at himself and blew kisses into his reflection, his magic causing little red hearts to appear around him as he admired himself. I am one hot Draconequus, he said. I absolutely adore me. Fluttershy wiped her eyes dry, giving him a wide, genuine smile full of warmth. Discord swore he saw admiration in her eyes as well, but didn't get to look at them for much longer. As she moved towards him and started nuzzling his side. I'm so glad you do, Discord, she said happily. I'm so very, very glad. She sighed as she felt his fingers tangle with her hair, scratching gently but firmly against her scalp. He looked down at her fondly, his eyes soft and full of his own deep feelings for her. And I adore you as well, Fluttershy. She took a sharp intake of breath, surprised at his words, as she looked up at him.
What did you say?
His loving look was quickly replaced with one of mischievousness.
Too late.
He teleported himself and reappeared above her, his face just centimeters away from her head as she looked up at him.
It's already been said.
But I'm not sure I heard you right.
Oh, I doubt that, Fluttershy.
He moved closer until his nose was shoved against hers. I very much doubt that. His voice was deep and throaty, making his voice low and smooth like silk. It sent shivers down her spine, the first one she ever experienced around him. Discord himself noticed the short second her skin trembled, making him smirk.
Feeling a bit chilly, Fluttershy?
What?
You're positively shivering. Oh, how horrible! After all that you've done for me, your darling, handsome princess, and this is how I repay you, with nothing but a sheer hanky for appreciation. I am nearly ashamed.
He snapped his fingers, and a small cloak the same color as her eyes appeared. He moved forward to tie it around her neck, making her blush as he did so, overly aware of how close they were to one another.
He really is very handsome. I like how he looks.
There. Better?
But there's so much more that I like about him, too.
She smiled as the soft cloak billowed behind her, the fabric soft and warm.
Yes, thank you.
Anything for you, Flutterbuddy.
She giggled, before shuffling a hoof on the ground.
I guess we should get back.
She didn't want to go. She was afraid to. She was afraid that she had gone too far, after all the commotion she had caused. What if they laughed at her? What if they teased her? What if they...
Good idea. You know, I genuinely was thinking of acquiring an animal friend of my own. I was going to see what that fraud fortune-teller said, just for sticks and giggles.
Discord!
What? She's got to be a fraud.
But she might not be. She's famous for a reason.
Pfft, yeah, and I'm sure her fortunes aren't generic and completely bland.
Discord.
He wasn't going to win this one, and he knew it. It was one of the reasons she was so darn attractive to him. Only so many ponies could make him act like this. He sighed loudly, making Fluttershy shake her head, despite her smiling.
Anyway,
He started again.
I was thinking that golden eagle, what was his name? Majesty. Now I think a pet with such a name is perfectly fitting for someone as handsome and grand as myself. Don't you think? After all, don't think I've forgotten that you find me attractive.
She squeaked, stopping in her tracks, and Discord chuckled.
That reminds me, Fluttershy.
He snapped his fingers, and a red award ribbon appeared in his claws, with the words "Good Taste" written across it. He attached it to the front of her cloak.
Congratulations!
He cheered, and clapped his hands together, confetti suddenly pouring over the two of them as the sound of noisemakers and trumpets were heard, without the objects themselves around. She touched the ribbon with her hoof, reading the words on them.
Congratulations. For what?
For being the first pony I've ever met that has a good taste in looks. Sadly, you and I are the only ones that know what true beauty is.
You mean because you and I both think you're...
She shut her mouth.
Exactly, my dear, he said, pointing at her, because we both think I'm the ummest of the and you too are Now all that's left for us is for you to put two and two together, and then we'll be right as rain.
The confetti then turned into a light rain, making Fluttershy shriek as Discord laughed. The two of them running out from under the rain cloud as they continued on back to Ponyville.
What do you mean, put two and two together?
Fluttershy asked, shaking herself slightly to get some of the water off.
Well, you see, 2 and 2 make 4.
She didn't even say his name in warning this time. Instead, she made a rather adorable frown at him, furrowing her skinny little eyebrows down, and that was all she needed to do. He chuckled.
What I meant was, you haven't figured it out yet.
Her ears flicked up in interest, looking up at him with big, curious eyes.
What do you mean?
Well, if I told you that, then you wouldn't figure it out, would you?
Figure what out?
Fluttershy, are you even listening to me?
He turned and grasped her chin lightly, moving her to look up at him.
You'll figure it out. All of it. One day. The who, the what, the when, the why. You'll figure all of it out. I already have.
I don't understand.
That's part of the process, I believe. I was the same way.
He turned his back to her and gestured for her to follow.
Come now, Slowpoke. Aren't you in charge of this little event thing, after all?
She trotted forward and came to his side, only to speak up again.
But you're not making any sense.
Good.
But Discord...
This time he teleported her, dropping down on all fours as Fluttershy appeared on his back.
If she's going to be so slow about it, then I may as well carry her myself.
Not that he minded. Not one bit.
As I said, you'll figure it out, dear. I have full faith in you. Though do me a favor, won't you?
She had no idea what any of this meant, but decided to have faith in him herself.
Whatever it is, he thinks I need to figure it out.
She smiled at him.
Then I guess I will. Yes?
He bent his neck backwards to look at her, still going forward.
Hurry it up, will you? I can only wait for so long, honestly. And once you do, you have to let me know right away. I have plans for it.
Plans?
He chuckled.
Oh, yes, Fluttershy. Plans. Many, many plans.
This time, he got to feel her shiver as she sat on his back.
And you've already figured it out?
She asked hesitantly. His smile grew smaller, making it more genuine and heartfelt.
Yeah.
She settled on his back and laid there, trying to relax as she listened.
Your devilishly handsome best friend definitely already figured it out.
She shot back up and even jumped off his back.
Discord!
Her face was as red as an atomic fireball. He threw his head back and laughed.
That, my dear, was a beautiful reaction. Just beautiful.
Even Fluttershy giggled and added quite shyly,
Like you?
That's right,
he nodded and stood back up, proudly posing again as he straightened his spine and lifted his shoulders.
Just like moi and you. Because we have good taste.
Because we're the only ones with good taste?
Now you're getting it.
They walked back. This time Fluttershy was in the conversation more. Together, they decided that a golden eagle was a good choice for Discord's pet. Fluttershy was excited about it, already planning playdates for Majesty and Angel Bunny, while thinking that it was a good excuse to see Discord more. Because they were friends, of course. Best friends. Fluttershy hadn't figured it out yet, but when they finally arrived back at the fair, Cadence knew with just one look at her.
I'm so sorry I left, girls.
Fluttershy apologized to her friends. They were quick to tell her that it was fine, that they were more concerned for her rather than they were for the event. It ended in a group hug, but Discord didn't really pay attention to that. Instead, he approached Cadence.
She's closer now than before, isn't she?
Discord whispered, hunched over and close to her side as he spoke, close to her ear.
Aside from the fact that she has a wonderful taste in looks.
Cadence rolled her eyes.
She trembled, Cadence. Trembled! Because she loves me. She most definitely does.
I know, Discord,
she retorted back.
She smirked. We discussed this, remember?
I know. I just like to brag about it.
She smacked him on the shoulder.
You're horrible, she joked.
Horribly handsome, you mean?
Oh, shut up, lover boy.
No.
What are you two talking about?
The two stopped and looked to Fluttershy, who was done talking with her friends, with Majesty the Golden Eagle on her back.
Oh, you know,
Cadence said, putting a hoof on Fluttershy's shoulder.
We were just catching up.
Yes, catching up,
Discord added.
Recent events and whatnot. Say, what have you got there? Is that my bird-to-be?
Oh, yes,
Fluttershy said, looking back at Majesty.
I was thinking you two could get acquainted first, just to make sure you get along well. And I'm sure you will.
Excellent, excellent. Let's go do that over there. Way over there.
He put a paw on Fluttershy's back, pointing over by the stage. Cadence smiled gently as she swore she saw Fluttershy shiver where he touched her for just a moment. It wasn't that chilly out either. Discord then looked back at the Princess of Love and raised his brows up and down. He mouthed only 4 words to her.
She has good taste.